Dear students, in this audio we shall discuss our Chapter 3, US Hegemony in World Politics, from your textbook Contemporary World Politics. Though, as per the changes made, this chapter has been deleted from the syllabus, but first 7 pages have been merged with Unit 2, the end of bipolarity. So we have to go through the first 7 pages of this chapter, US Hegemony in World Politics. And in this part of the audio, we shall discuss the introduction and the main points of this story, the main points of the chapter, and the example of 3 different people to understand the dominance or hegemony of the US. Now, the introduction. We have seen that the end of the Cold War left the US without any serious rival in the world. The era since then has been described as a period of US dominance or a unipolar world. In this chapter, we try to understand the nature, extent, and limits of this dominance. We begin by narrating the story of the rise of the new world order from the First Gulf War, to the US-led invasion of Iraq. Now, main points of the chapter, main points to remember. 1. After the disintegration of Soviet Union, the US hegemony began in 1991. 2. In August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. 3. The United Nations mandated the liberation of Kuwait by force. 4. The force of 660,000 troops from 34 countries fought against Iraq, and ultimately Iraq was defeated. This war is known as the First Gulf War. 5. The UN operation was called Operation Desert Storm, and it was mainly an American operation. 6. America used smart bombs, and some observers called it as the computer war. 7. During First Gulf War, the US President was George H.W. Bush, whereas Iraqi President was Saddam Hussein. 8. William Jefferson Bill Clinton of the Democratic Party won the presidential elections in 1992 and in 1996. 9. In 1999, Yugoslavian actions occurred against the predominantly Albanian population in the province of Kosovo, and NATO forces were stationed in Kosovo. 10. Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization. 11. President Bill Clinton ordered Operation Infinite Reach. 12. On 11 September 2001, 19 hijackers hailing from Arab countries took control of 4 American commercial aircrafts and flew them into important buildings in the US. 13. The attacks have come to be known as 9/11. 14. The attacks killed nearly 3,000 people. 15. President George W. Bush launched Operation Enduring Freedom against all those suspected to be behind the September attack. 16. On 19 March 2003, the US launched its invasion of Iraq under the code name Operation Iraqi Freedom, Saddam Hussein was defeated in the war. 17. International politics was dominated by America. And now let us see the example of three different people to understand the dominance or hegemony of the US. And these three different people are Aisha, Jabu, and Henry. So let's begin with Aisha. Aisha was doing very well in her studies at a high school in the outskirts of Baghdad and was planning to study medicine in university. She lost a leg in 2003 when a missile slammed into an air raid shelter in which she was hiding with her friends. Now she is learning to walk all over again. She still plans to become a doctor, but only after the foreign armies leave her country. Now, Jabu. Jabu is a talented young artist who lives in Durban, South Africa. His paintings are heavily influenced by traditional tribal art forms. He wants to go to art school and later open his own studio. However, his father wants him to study for an MBA and then join the family business. The business is not doing too well. Jabu's father feels that with an MBA degree, Jabu will be able to make the family business profitable. Now, the third example about Henry. Henry is a young man living in Perth, Australia. His parents are immigrants from Russia. His mother gets very angry every time Henry puts on blue jeans to go to the church. She wants him to look respectable in church. Henry tells his mother that jeans are cool, that they give him the sense of freedom. Henry has had an argument with his mother. Jabu may be forced to study a subject that he has no interest in. In contrast, Aisha has lost her leg and is lucky to be alive. How can we even discuss their problems in the same breath? We can and must do so. As we shall see in this chapter, all three have been in different ways affected by the US hegemony. We will meet Aisha, Jabu, Henry again, but let us first understand how US hegemony began and how it operates in the world today. In this audio, we shall continue our chapter US Hegemony in World Politics from Contemporary World Politics. And in this part of the audio, we shall continue with the topic Beginning of the New World Order. We will follow the popular usage of the word America to refer to the United States of America, but it may be useful to remind ourselves that the expression America covers the two continents of North and South America, and that the US is only one of the countries of the American continent. Thus, the use of the word America solely for the US is already a sign of the US hegemony that we seek to understand in this chapter. Before we move forward, let me tell you the meaning of the word hegemony. It means leadership or dominance, especially by one state or social group over others. Now let us continue. The sudden collapse of the Soviet Union took everyone by surprise. While one of the two superpowers ceased to exist, The other remained with all its powers intact, even enhanced. Thus, it would appear that the US hegemony began in 1991 after Soviet power disappeared from the international scene. This is largely correct, but we need to keep in mind the two riders or two clarifications to this. First, as we shall see in this chapter, some aspects of US hegemony did not emerge in 1991, but in fact go back to the end of the Second World War in 1945. Second, the US did not start behaving like a hegemonic power right from 1991. It became clear much later that the world was in fact living in a period of hegemony. Let us therefore look at this process by which US hegemony got established more closely. In August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, rapidly occupying and finally control it. After a series of diplomatic attempts failed at convincing Iraq to quit its aggression, the United Nations mandated the liberation of Kuwait by force. For the UN, this was a dramatic decision after years of deadlock during the Cold War. The US President George H. W. Bush hailed the emergence of a new world order. The first instance of US hegemony came into observation through Operation Desert Storm by the UN during First Gulf War to retreat Iraqi forces from Kuwait. This operation was dominated and won by the US due to vast technological gap between the US military capability and other states. Widespread television coverage also made it a video game war, with viewers around the world watching the destruction of Iraqi forces live on TV in the comfort of their living rooms. The US got more money from countries like Germany, Japan, and Saudi Arabia than it had spent on the war. The Clinton years. The next topic. William Jefferson Bill Clinton, the newly elected president of the US in 1992 and again in 1996, focused on soft issues like promotions, democracy promotions, climate change, and world trade rather than of military power and security. An important US military action during the Bill Clinton years was in response to Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in 1998. The most significant episode occurred in 1999 in response to Yugoslavian actions against the predominantly Albanian population in the province of Kosovo. The air forces of the NATO countries, led by the US, bombarded targets around Yugoslavia, forcing the downfall of the government of Slobodan Milosevic and the stationing of NATO force in Kosovo. In spite of sanctions made by the United Nations, US used all its forces in curbing terrorism. However, this was not the end of the terrorism, rather beginning as it was seen in 9/11. Now let's move to the next topic, 9/11 and the global war on terror. On 11 September 2001, 19 hijackers hailing from a number of Arab countries, took control of four commercial aircraft shortly after takeoff and crashed into World Trade Center in New York, Pentagon Building in Arlington, Virginia, U.S. Defense Department, and the Capitol Building of the U.S. Congress in Pennsylvania came to be known as Event of 9/11 in the U.S. In response to 9/11, George W. Bush won the elections in the U.S., succeeding Bill Clinton. The U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom against all those suspected behind attack in 9/11, mainly Al-Qaeda and Taliban regime. The US forces made arrests all over the world, transported and detained the persons in secret prisons like Guantanamo Bay, a US Navy base in Cuba, where the prisoners did not enjoy the protection of international law or the law of their own country or that of the US. Even the UN representatives were not allowed to meet these persons. Now, the Iraq invasion. On 19 March 2003, the US launched Operation Iraqi Freedom to prevent Iraq from developing weapons of mass destruction, in short, WMD, in the ostensible purpose to control oil fields and installing a regime in Iraq friendly to US. Although the government of Saddam Hussein fell swiftly, the US had not been able to pacify Iraq. Over 3,000 military personnel and about 50,000 Iraqi civilians had been killed in this war.